the reality is that there are going to be those folks that we're just going to have to let die. However, the cool thing is that I think there is a change in that many states across the nation are now legalizing cannabis for recreational use, for whatever you want to use it for, and growing it, and et cetera. And the government has typically, although it's still officially their stance, they could come roll in to whatever state is legalized and still bust you under federal law. But I think they're staying away from the states' rights, who have then taken the position to say, hey, we're going to legalize this, we're going to open it up for research, we're going to open it up for people being able to self-medicate or use it recreationally or whatever. So I think that there's come some kind of a sea change there. But I do think it's going to be one of those leaders that is just at the top looking to gain a lot of votes that finally says, let's remove this from Schedule 1. Now, you guys want to start growing it in a very controlled environment, because one of the issues that we've had just now in these recent days have been the cartels are running a lot of grow operations inside the United States, and they're using deadly pesticides and things like that to spray their cannabis with so that they don't have pest problems, but then that winds up going directly into the bodies of the folks who smoke it. And you guys are basically looking to create a controlled, very scientific atmosphere to create some medical grade, research grade cannabis for treating veterans and other folks, right?
Absolutely. So I guess the first thing I would say to that is, I think you're absolutely right. The fact that states are saying, hey, the federal government has said, let's take a more hands-off approach to whatever the states decide. I think with the current administration, states' rights is a big thing, obviously, like that's a cornerstone for the Republican Party. However, the problem with that on a personal level, and I know with Doug and Ben as well, is veterans don't participate in a state healthcare system. So while that may affect the consumer who wants to go purchase an edible or a pre-rolled joint or even medical cannabis, a veteran takes part in a national healthcare system in the VA. So even if cannabis is legal in your state and you're treated at the VA, like my friend and like myself, frankly, the federal law reigns supreme. So even though I'm in the state of California where cannabis is legalized, it's very easy to get whatever you want. My healthcare system is a federal healthcare system, so they don't care or acknowledge it. It's essentially just two different worlds they're living in. So it's a good step, if you will, in the right direction, but it still leaves the people that need the medicine behind. Still leaves those folks that need the medicine behind the most. The other part of that is, I would say, is like talking about the red state in North Carolina, where I grew up, and most of the other most of the other states that have not taken a more progressive stance towards cannabis. They're sort of, while they don't want to talk about cannabis, they are absolutely happy to talk about veteran healthcare, and that's what I'm happy to talk about. It's like anything, if you can find sort of a common starting ground and a commonality amongst two people, and work your way backwards, as opposed to saying, look, we disagree about cannabis, we should have cannabis policy. But if you say, look, I support veteran healthcare, you support veteran healthcare, how can we come up with something? Clearly the current system isn't working with veteran healthcare. Veteran suicides at an all-time high, around 22 a day for the past 5 years. That's more people than have died in like the Vietnam War. You could put all these people in the Chicago Bears stadium, essentially. And to say that we shouldn't be looking at alternative healthcare treatments for those folks is, it's borderline criminal, and it's certainly asinine. So that's the starting place I take with more conservative people, is like, look, you support vets, I support vets, you sent me to Afghanistan to do something. The least you can do is research something that's going to help me take care of myself better. And to research cannabis, by the way, requires no federal money and no legislation. It requires a certain business permit, existed since 1970. Like, there's nothing new that needs to happen. It's just that the government, one of those permits in the past 65 years. That's all they've given. And it's taken me 3 years to review my paperwork. So that's how it's going. So
there you go.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It took 2 years for us.
Yeah. So you're basically, your position is, I just need to get to the right guy get them on the phone to get the right stroke of the pen to be able to make this happen, because it's not like we have to put any new policy in place or any new laws in place. All we have to do is get a friggin' signature on a piece of paper and we're golden to move forward. Is that accurate?
Yes, it so happens that signature has to come from like the Attorney General. So easier said than done. However, this while it is sort of a niche, complex, nuanced issue in the cannabis space, Congress in 2016 recognized this as a problem. And that the problem that they recognized is, like, to put it most simply, 200 million Americans live in a state where they can access cannabis unless they're a doctor or a scientist, and they cannot. So like that fact in and of itself is crazy. A scientist and a doctor can't access legitimate cannabis, but a consumer can. That's a problem that needs fixing. The Congress in 2016 figured that out and directed the DEA, said to the DEA, make this right. And the DEA, which is the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, they're the ones that regulate everything having to do with controlled substances. The DEA said, we agree, we're going to license multiple people to produce cannabis for research. A number of groups or people applied, myself being one of them. For 3 years, nothing happened. And they said, we're working, we'll call you, don't call us. We're working on it.
Yep.
It's like,
Can't even get a text back.
Can't even get, something, a DM, nothing.
Dick pics, guys.
Anything. Just like acknowledge I exist. So fast forward, Attorney General Barr is getting confirmed by the Senate earlier, I guess, this year. And numerous senators, Republican and Democrat, said to him, this is crazy. The organization you're about to take over has had paperwork from people who want to do the right thing and go through this miserably complex process of producing a controlled substance with the DEA permit. Do you promise that you will review those permits and move the program forward? And he said yes. Multiple times he said yes, written, verbal, TV, write it, whatever. Like, he was under oath and he said it.
Right.
I am going to take the man at his word. And then in August, so whatever, 30, 45 days ago, the Department of Justice formally instructed the DEA, issue these permits, enough messing around already,
right.
Make this happen. And I think with the vaping crisis, we're seeing, like you alluded to, Sean, like we're seeing the need for meaningful research. There has to be a federal regime and method to study cannabis. Otherwise, like, this is not going to be the end of it, right? The vaping stuff is not going to be the end of it until people have regulation, until they have quality controls, like any other medicine you would take. And so I think unfortunately, it's people dying and becoming sick through the vaping crisis. It's elevated the importance of this. I hope that if there's a benefit that can come out of it, it's that people take seriously the need to do really thorough research with cannabis.